very hard to be accurate about what these legacies are. So I'm very happy to have this discussion. And with something like extended learning, as I'll talk about in a minute, it's very hard to pin down to what is absolutely a legacy from an extended learning input, as it were, in a young person's life. So, talking about extended learning, Newham Playing for Success, which is a very amazing initiative that we had the pleasure of being part of and still are, just holding on to gradually. And the Olympic and Paralympic activities in Newham, potential legacies, and in particular the Inspire Learning Centre, which you might be interested in, which is a tangible legacy, I'm really pleased to say, and it is a community legacy that will be in the Olympic Stadium. My take on it is quite positive, and as an educationalist, a teacher, and then I was a youth worker, you have to be positive. You have to see everything as an opportunity. So that's my take on it. And I just wanted to bring you back to what Vice Chancellor of UEL said, John, in relation to his father and what his father experienced in being part of that Eton Manor Club. That's kind of what we're all about. Everybody's talked about housing and businesses, regeneration, but we're really about the social, educational, social emotional sides of being involved with the Olympics and Paralympics. So what is extended learning? You might know of it as after-school activities, study support, extracurricular, enrichment. You might have heard of it in those ways. So it's anything that happens after school and is additional to the statutory core offer. So breakfast clubs, lunchtime clubs, after-school clubs, Saturday school, summer school. It could be scouts, it could be all kinds of activities that young people get involved with. As I've put up there, life-changing, and it should be fun and stimulating, and a lot of what we try and deliver in Newham is very vocational, very vocationally linked. We don't just try and have an extra club after school, like a games club or something like that. What we try and do is something that will actually inspire them. So Playing for Success, we were very, very fortunate to have Playing for Success come to Newham. Playing for Success was an initiative. It was part of New Labour's ideals of extended learning, extended services in schools, and Every Child Matters. So I don't know if people were ever involved with that, if people remember that, but it was that vehicle to build partnerships and personalised learning, social emotional learning in schools, and it was, for me, it bridged my school teaching and my youth work. It bridged the both, because in Playing for Success provision, we talked to the children on first name terms. They talked to us on first name terms. So it had the formality, but it still had the creativity, and we were working with much smaller groups and an informality, but it made fun, learning very creative. It aimed to raise levels of numeracy, literacy, ICT and key skills, and it used sport as an inspirational thing. So instead of trying to do sport, these young people were using sport as an inspirational thing. So for example, our centre at the West Ham United Football Club, we were measuring the pitch, interviewing players, making films about it or animations about it, as opposed to actually doing the sport itself. So very much like the Olympics and Paralympics, using the inspiration and being inspired by it. Started in football clubs in 1998, and it quickly grew. So it started off in the football clubs, it quickly grew to encompass centres like Wimbledon, ice hockey centres, and even grew to inspirational places like Courts of Justice in Nottingham, an airport in Leeds, and they actually had a shopping centre in Leeds. I'm just wondering if we can see our old shopping centre from here, actually, almost. The old shopping centre here, we took that model and we put our own study centre into one of the shops in Old Stratford shopping centre, and called it the Think Store. So I don't know if people remember that over the last 6 years. And it was a funky nail bar before, and now it's turning back into a Subway. So we actually had a shop, and so that was very exciting. And that was using actually enterprise and business as an inspirational theme, not sports theme. So we capitalise on the same idea, but we use a shopping centre situation. We also had one down in the East London Gymnastics Club in Beckton. I don't know if you're aware of that. A very exciting venue because the children are the athletes. So you get these young people coming to perform and demonstrate in the celebration events. Little 6-year-olds with six-packs, that's what I used to call them. Professional athletes, if you like, coming to perform to the other children, very inspirational. And then we had our full centre in the Abbey Lane Children's Centre. We called it our Legacy Centre. And this centre, which we were working on this proposal for an Olympic centre over 10 years now, I've been involved with this. This centre was sort of the beginning point before we were then going to move into the aquatic centre. So we've got numerous plans where we were going to move into the aquatic centre. So we were very lucky, we had 4 centres. This was funded, 3-way funded, Department for Education, the local authorities, and then the club, the sports venue housed us. If you like, heating, lighting, water for free, but the other people actually put in monetary value. So we'll come back to what happened to those in the end. So moving on. Now this is where I got a bit carried away last night and started moving things around. Because what I then realised was actually there's a massive chronology to this, and as John was saying, I do remember pre-bid because we were very, very much part of it, and we were working in Newham with children and young people towards gaining the bid and putting forward ideas, workshops in schools. Children had a conference in the West Ham United Football Club that SEBCO actually came to. So we were very much part of that movement. So I've kind of put 2004 on there, but it could have been 2003. So it was in children's minds. So imagine carrying that through them, with them. It's 12 years ago now. So they've had this continual drip feed as they've been going through school. Okay, thanks, Priya. So there we go to winning the bid, and I don't know if you remember this, that 12 children went from Langdon School as part of, I'm going to say 12, I think it could have been more, went as part of the winning bid team to Singapore. So they were actually with other athletes, you can see there, presented, and they were very much part of SEBCO's team. In fact, the Queen went to Langdon School afterwards to personally thank them. And this is a comment that Junaid's mother, this is Junaid here, it's a comment that Junaid's mother made on him returning from that trip to Singapore. So quite an inspiring event for him in his life. And after that, he became an ambassador for all sorts of things leading up to the Games. So we didn't think we'd quite get it. We thought Paris was going to get it. But as a result, it just snowballed from there. And just to say that I was actually, I was very excited about the idea of it, and I was sat in West Ham, and I don't even know what the technology was like then, but I think it was an old TV I was watching the bid result come in on. And when it said London, I got quite emotional, I got quite excited about the whole thing. And I do remember a cleaner, and I was on my own in the centre completely, watching this come through. And I remember a cleaner coming into the centre, and not being happy at all, thinking it was going to be disastrous for our area. It was going to completely ruin it and take over it, and there wouldn't be the resources anymore, and it would be an absolute disaster. So those were 2 reactions going on, but positive education is, I thought, it's going to be incredible. Anyway, in 2007, for once I actually made a bid for us as officers to gain from funding, and I put in a bid to the League of the Exchange of Commonwealth Teachers. And where in the Commonwealth has had the Games? Sydney. Oh, we'll put down Sydney. And we were so lucky, we managed to get it. So 10 of us went out to Sydney to learn about the legacy of their Games. So they had their Games in 2000. This was now 2007, 7 years later. This is Cheryl Alexander from Carpenter's Primary School. She was the head teacher. her playground had cranes going over it constantly in the lead up to the games, very noisy. And this is Alan Skewis, who was a Sports Legacy advisor. He's now the E20 director. So there's the people that attended with us. Before you flick on, I just want to see if there was anything. Yeah, so our main reflections from this was that they hadn't thought about their educational legacy at all. And in us writing to them to say, oh, can we come and learn about your educational legacy? They went, and they quickly put something together. And they talked to us about what they were going to do. So it is something that you can see that just, creeps up on you. And the Olympic Park was a ghost town, absolute ghost town. So we spent 20 minutes on a bus or something every day trundling over there. And when we got there, was nothing there, nothing. So in comparison, we're doing quite well. But it was very interesting. But their education programs were incredible. And there have been lots of resources from this, and I'm quite happy to share those. So any of these projects I'm talking about, please get in touch if you'd like to know more about them. The use of volunteers was phenomenal. So I don't know if you picked that up, but in the Sydney Games, the use of volunteers was absolutely fantastic. Their link with the universities, really, really great. Okay, thanks. Yeah. So going back to our little project, so we started to share good practice with other boroughs, schools. We started hosting these to try and see how we could share resources and capitalise on what was coming up ahead of us. Thanks, Pia. Just after the Athens Games, you can see. Yeah. And this is something here. That's Keith Gilbert from UEA, came to speak to us about the Beijing visit, because they went over to Beijing. So there's a connection there with UEA. And this is another Paralympian, visually impaired, who came to speak to us about his experience. So we try to get on board everybody and anything for the benefit of our children and young people in Newham. Thanks, Pia. Schools ran endless projects. Schools actually took over their school curriculum, not just their extended curriculum, to have it all related to Olympics and Paralympics. And we had healthy living style programs that were actually for families as well, to look at nutrition on budget, healthy lunch boxes. So I would say that the impact was quite large. That was with 12 schools. Actually, can we just flip back to the Paralympic realm champion? Sorry, Pia. Oh, we haven't come on to that yet. No, don't worry. I'm mixing up my slides. Yeah. So Get Set, is anybody aware of Get Set? So Get Set's come about again with Rio. And Get Set is this national programme that the London Organising Committee of the Olympic and Paralympic Games put together. So instead of going around schools with resources, because every Olympics is obliged to do this, is to have a cultural Olympiad and to have some education programme, they put it all online. So they had this new Wizzy online resource that people could access and use as it fitted them. Schools could also register and upload what they were doing in relation to the values. They used the values of the Olympics and Paralympics. I'm not going to go through all of them, but respect, determination, equality, friendship, and they use these values. Thanks, Pia. This is one of our own little projects, Paralympic Playground Champions. We were awash with funding during the extended school days, and I was constantly asked, can you think of a project? We've got this underspend, would you like to do something? And I'd just gone through it. Yes, those are the days. And I'd just come back for a presentation with this company who did these special markings for schools and normal playground markings. And I just said, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could have truly inclusive markings? So instead of there being a prerequisite, it's a netball court, it's a football pitch, these are the markings for this, that we had markings that could be owned by every child in the playground. So they go out there, and whether they're in a wheelchair, whatever, they could all engage in it together. So we worked on this, these markings, and they were put into 24 schools that were free. Schools had free training because we were paying for it. And I did a little email recce last week to find out what was going on in these schools. and many of them have been tarmacked over, probably because of building schools for the future, and many of the skills were probably not transferred due to the change in staff. So it's a great shame, but you know, I will hold my hand up and say I was not prepared to really think about, you know, the longitude of this and how we could sustain it. Looking back, and we could have done more to sustain this. So that's a lesson that we learned. Thanks, Pia. We used to do visits to schools where we had Paralympians. Tessa Sanderson's been working for the council. I don't know if she works with us anymore, for a long time, so she was our sort of chief athlete, if you like. And we spoke to schools about what it was to be disabled, a para-athlete, and that kind of thing. And kids could ask questions. We did a lot of visits with that. Thanks, Pia. This was our national programme. So we didn't just work in Newham. Within Playing for Success, 162 centres. There was a massive, massive opportunity there. We got the Inspire Mark from LOCOG. LOCOG were giving out Inspire Marks to organisations and projects. And we had huge launches. This, I have to say, was one of my sweetest memories of this time, because these children had won poetry competition in each of their 9 regions. So this was across 9 regions, and it was using values leading up to the games. And each child had won their region's poetry competition, and they were given a ticket, which I felt like I was, you know, it was Charlie and the Chocolate Factory or something. They were given a ticket to come down to London with their parent and have a day out, if you like, an Olympic Paralympic day out. And some of these children and parents had never come to London before, or even used the underground system. So it was a very sweet little thing that we did. So we went to the site, did some more activity, then they went to the BT Tower and had lunch as it revolved, and did some more poetry activity and met Olympians and Paralympians. So that was a very sweet thing. And just sort of thinking, you know, what Julian would say to me. So, okay, what about, it's Newham, what about, you know, the larger picture, and how people outside of London, how would they feel about Olympics and Paralympics? Well, in actual fact, as we've seen from our Olympics and Paralympics, there's a local hero everywhere. And I think if we go back to this aspirational thing that we're trying to capture with the games, there is a local hero everywhere. It doesn't matter where you come from in England, not the UK. You can be inspired. You can meet these people and see that, you know, this dream could be yours. I appreciate those resources and everything else behind it, but it is inspiring. Thanks, Pia. So I leave enough time for Pia. Just moving on to the actual games itself. 2012, during the games, there was a limit to what we could do, because obviously things were very tight and difficult in Newham, but I run the summer school every year in Newham. This is its last, we're finished. The last years have just gone. Very sad. As usual, we had 124 different courses, everything from go-karting to horse riding to hair and beauty, to cake decoration. Very vocationally linked, from 8 to 18-year-olds. We worked in, I think, 24 different venues that summer across 6 weeks. That was our huge summer school, and all the children that completed got a medal. That's a comment from a young person who got to play tennis with Mark Hunter on the pitch and hold his gold medal. 2 minutes. Okay. So is that 2 minutes to 20 minutes, is it?
Where, if we can kind of move on as quickly.
So the next thing I wanted to move on to, if you click on, was potential legacies. Just to throw out at you very quickly. During the change of government, 2010, and the economic crisis, PFS folded. We didn't have the funding anymore in the council. This is a significant impact on our legacy of our projects, I would say. 25 centres continued out of 162. That is huge. And no recognition of the values that we'd done through the games and what we'd achieved in our centres, and no recognition of the power of using sport. So all this talk about British values, like, excuse me, we've just spent the last 6 years doing this in our schools. What about the Olympics and Paralympics, all those values? You know, we have no values. Hello, we've just been educating our children about values and what they mean. And the cut to extended learning, we talk about summer school cutting. Our centres have gone down from 1 to 4 in Newham. So we've just got our one Playing for Success centre there. results, we've got PFS results, Get Set results you can talk about. And I would say there's an awareness and an acceptance of disability, which is, I would like to think, is demonstrated in the amount of success that we've had in the Rio Games. But just another little story, sorry, before I hand over to Pia. Walking through the Westfield shopping centre, huge basketball players from the USA in their lovely shorts, in their get-up, in their sneakers, with their prosthetic legs, or not even prosthetic, just their metal legs showing below the knee, striding through Westfield shopping centre. I'd never seen anything like that in my life. Children running after them for signatures and whatever. And for me, seeing that in Westfield shopping centre, I knew Newham wouldn't be the same after that. I'd like to think Newham wouldn't be the same after that in terms of acceptance of disability and how we view disability. So for me, I think that is very significant.